Today we're going to pick up with the arm and leg muscles, and that's going to finish us out for this section. So picking up here, we have what's referred to as the bicep brachii. This is going to be attached from the scapula, moving on down to the radius. Its action is going to be a flexion and a supposition from the forearm to the flexion of the arm. And so this is going to be the muscle basically when you flex and you're showing people your muscles. It's going to be that bicep there. Lots of times we just refer to it as the bicep. Next, underneath that bicep, if you were to trim it at those tendons and lift it up, you're going to have what's referred to as the brachialis. The brachialis is attached from the humerus down to the ulna, and its job is there for flexion of the forearm as well. So that's going to help bulk up that muscle underneath that bicep. Then if you look towards what we would consider the underneath of the arm or the back of the arm, you have what we refer to as the triceps or even the triceps brachii. Most of the time we just say triceps. And that's going to be attached at the humerus, scapula, and down to the ulna. It's going to help with extension of the forearm and arm. And so looking here, we can snip that bicep brachii, or just the bicep is what most of us refer to it as, and that's what I was telling you, the brachialis is going to be underneath there. And so you see it running along the arm underneath that bicep. Next, going on down to the forearm, we have what is referred to as the brachioradialis. That brachioradialis is going to be attached at the humerus and runs down to the radius. It's going to be used for things like flexion, supination, and pronation of the forearm. So turning your arms forward and backwards if you're sticking them straight out. So you turn it so your palms are up and turn it so the palms are down. And that's what that muscle is going to help with. Next, we have what's referred to as the flexor carpi radialis, and that's going to go from the humerus and attach all the way down, run along the radius and down to the metacarpals, and that's going to help with flexion and abduction of the hand. Now, we've talked about abduction and adduction before, just with the other muscles. I don't know if I went over it, but abduction, that's A-B-D-U-C-T-I-O-N, that's simply going to be moving the limbs away from the body, kind of like you're doing a jumping jack. This would be jumping out. Adduction is moving those limbs back towards the body or towards the midline. So that would be like jumping in from the jumping jack. So you're going out with abduction and back in with adduction, A-D-D-U-C-T-I-O-N. And so that's what I mean by abduction and adduction. So that flexor carpi radialis there is going to do that flexion and abduction. So going out away from the body. Next, we have what's referred to as the palmaris longus. This attaches in from the humerus and runs down to the palmar aponeurosis or the fascia there, and that's going to help with flexion of the hand. Next, we have what's referred to as the flexor carpi ulnaris, and that goes from the humerus, runs along the ulna and touches in at the ulna and the metacarpals. That's going to be there for flexion and adduction of the hand, so bringing it back towards the midline of the body. Here we have the supinator that attaches in at the ulna and humerus and runs down the radius and attaches. It's going to help with supination of the forearm. Now looking at the other side of the arm there, what you would be considered if you're standing anatomically correct, this would be the posterior part of the hand. We're going to come to the extensor digitorum. This is going to attach in and run from the humerus down to the phalanges, and it's actually going to help with extension of the phalanges and the hand. So you're extending it. Here you see that extensor carpi radialis longus. This tells us that it is a long muscle. It's going to run from the humerus down to the metacarpals, and it's there for extension and abduction of the hand. Now going on to the leg here, the first muscle we see is going to be the gluteus medius. And lots of times we refer to these as our glutes. You will do these, do squats and things to work these, to build these up. It does help with a better posterior or buttocks. In this gluteus medius here, the upper part of the buttocks, or you consider the lower part of your back, is going to be a safe place for an injection. So we talked about the deltoid being a good place if you need an injection. Let's say you need some type of shot of some sort or a vaccination. So also the gluteus medius is going to be your second place that you're going to find to put a good injection into. All right, so with the gluteus medius, that's going to attach at the ilium and run down to the femur. And that's going to be there for abduction and medial rotation of the thigh. Next, you see the larger part, and lots of times when you're talking about the butt or the buttocks, you're going to talk about the gluteus maximus. And that gluteus maximus is going to attach in at the ilium of the pelvic girdle. It also attaches at the coccyx and sacrum and runs down to the femur. That is going to help with extension and lateral rotation of the thigh. Next, we come to what's known as the tensor fascia latae. And so there's going to be a tendinous fibers going throughout there. You'll also see a muscle that's going to be in with that. And that runs into what turns into your IT band or your iliotibial band. So it runs from the ilium down to the tibia, and it's used for flexion and abduction of the thigh. Next here, you're looking at a set of muscles that's going to be in the front part of the leg. The set of muscles is going to be referred to as your hamstrings, not your hamstrings, sorry, your quads. And with the quads, it is like it sounds, quad means four. So this is going to be a set of 4 muscles, and they're going to be made up of what's known as the rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and the vastus intermedialis. And so that rectus femoris you're going to see right there on top. Next, you have that vastus lateralis, and that there is going to be towards like the side of the leg. That's also going to be a good muscle for an injection. So if you need a steroid shot, if you need any type of shot, lots of times with little children, that's where they will put the vaccinations. And so that's going to be a good place for it. You'll also have what's referred to as the vastus medialis. We're getting ready to look at that on the other side. And if you were to, hold on just a second, snip this tendon here and lift up the rectus femoris, underneath there, you're going to find what's called the vastus intermedialis. You cannot see it because of the rectus femoris on top, but underneath you have the vastus intermedialis. So that's right there in the middle. And those 4 are going to be what make up your quadriceps, or what we refer to as quads. Now, quads are going to be useful. They're going to make up the biggest muscle mass that you find in the body, more than any other group in the body. And they're going to be used for things like running and kicking, jumping, walking, dancing. So anything that moves you around on your legs. Next, we're going to go to the gracilis. This gracilis is going to be attached from the pubis, and remember that's in a pelvic girdle, and go down to the tibia. Its job is going to be adduction, which remember is going to be bringing it back towards the body or the midline, and medial rotation of the thigh, and it is also helped with flexion of the leg. Next, we have the adductor longus. This is going to attach from the pubis that's in the pelvic girdle down to the femur, and it's helped with adduction, flexion, and rotation of the thigh. Moving on, we have the adductor magnus. That's attached at the pubis and the ischium, and it's going to stretch down to the femur and attach to the femur. That's helping with adduction, rotation, flexion, and extension of the thigh. Next, you have the sartorius. This is going to be a muscle that you see attached up at the top, and it's going to run on down. So it attaches at the ilium and runs across the thigh, and it's going to attach in at the tibia, right there at the knee. Its job is flexion of the leg and flexion, abduction, and lateral rotation of the thigh. And then there we have that vastus medialis I told you about that is working with those quadriceps. And so that helps with extension or flexion. That helps with moving as far as running, walking, jumping, dancing, going upstairs, things like that. Moving on to the back part of the leg, or the posterior part. Now the first thing you're going to find is going to be that biceps femoris. That biceps femoris is going to be in with a group of muscles on the back of the legs called the hamstrings. It's also going to be with the semimembranosus and the semitendinosus. So those are the three muscles that are going to make up the hamstrings. So what those do is they're going to extend the hip and flex the knee. They also help with things like walking, climbing stairs, doing squats, and other leg movements. They're also going to help with basic just moving around. So there's your biceps femoris. You have your semitendinosus. And then you have your semimembranosus. Now, if you were to clip the tendon right here on the semitendinosus and lift that up, you would see that this is a larger muscle underneath here for the semimembranosus. Next, we're going into the adductor magnus. This is attached from the pubis and ischium, and it runs down to the femur. It helps with adduction, rotation, flexion, and extension of the thigh. Moving on down towards the lower part of the leg. Here you're going to see what's referred to as the fibularis longus. And that is going to run with, it's a superficial muscle basically on the outer part or the side of the leg. It's on the lateral section. It's going to help with plantar flexion, also eversion of the foot and ankle. And so eversion is when you can twist it to the right side or the left side. So you can move them back and forth. Then we have the extensor digitorum longus. This is going to run from the tibia and fibula down to the phalanges. It's going to help with things like dorsiflexion. And so that's when you're flexing the foot, but pointing it up towards the shin. So you're trying to bring it up. It also helps with extension of the distal and middle phalanges. Next, you see, wrong way, the tibialis anterior. With the tibialis anterior, that's going to go from the tibia to the metatarsals, and that's going to help with dorsiflexion again and inversion of the foot. Turning it around to look at the back or posterior part of the leg, you have your gastrocnemius. This is basically going to be your large calf muscle. It's going to help with things such as plantar flexion and helps flex the knee. And so that's the big muscle that you see in the back of the leg, especially large in runners. Then attaching it to the calcaneus is going to be the calcaneal tendon. Notice how it's a big, thick tendon that runs down the back of the leg over top of the muscle that's underneath it called the soleus. And that's also going to go by another name, which is referred to as the Achilles tendon. And that's going to help you with walking. Next, you have that soleus underneath, and you can see it on the other side where they cut the gastrocnemius slightly, so you can see just a part of it there. That soleus is going to be another large muscle in the back of the leg, and it's going to stretch all the way down to the heel or the calcaneus, and it's going to be used for things like walking, jumping, and also helps stop the body from falling forward. And the gastrocnemius also helps with running and walking and movements such as that. Next, underneath where they cut away the gastrocnemius and part of that soleus, you're going to see what's referred to as a flexor digitorum longus. It's going to run from the tibia down to the phalanges, and it's going to help with things like plantar flexion of the foot and flexion of the distal and middle phalanges. So that is going to be the back of the leg. That's going to finish us up for the muscles that you do need to know for this section.